Hello and welcome to Good Games Well Played, episode 148. I'm Clint, aka JCM, with this week's Messiah.
Hello.
No Isley today. He is busy. But yeah, we can go ahead and jump right into it. So, right the morning I posted last episode, a news article went up saying that Final Fantasy XIV on Xbox will require a Game Pass subscription in order to play it online. Even though I believe they previously said it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I thought like, okay, I'll tag it. It's Monday. Maybe by the end of the week there'll be an update from Phil Spencer or someone saying like, "Oh yeah, our bad." It was just an error because it wasn't like they said it. It was in like the description of the game. You know, like you look at details like, "Oh, it's 1080p 4K upscaled online multiplayer with Game Pass," and like that feels like very boilerplate, like copy paste kind of a template. So I'm like, oh, maybe it was just a typo on the store, but there's been no updates, so it's like, okay, I guess that's the case, but it seems like a really bad move.
And I expected to see like a tweet from the Final Fantasy XIV account, like, oh, the blog post went up that said you need Game Pass or, gold or whatever to play the game. That's not the case. Like some kind of correction from them. I don't recall seeing one unless I
Yeah.
missed it.
Yeah, and a lot of people try to bring up like, oh well, obviously on PlayStation you don't need it. And they go, oh, you need PlayStation Plus to play Destiny 2 because people talk about like free to play games don't require PS Plus, and it's like, no, you only need it if you play the paid content of Destiny 2. Then you need PlayStation Plus. The free stuff for Destiny 2, yeah, you don't need it. But yeah, it's just like I feel like it's something they're gonna fix. But right now they're too focused on other stuff, which we'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, and then outside of that, apparently, Kadokawa Corporation, who's the parent company of FromSoftware, they acquired the developer behind Octopath Traveler, who's called Acquire. So they are now a wholly owned subsidiary of Kadokawa. So I'm curious. In my mind, for some reason, I thought they were like part of Square.
They were. Octopath Traveler was published by Square, but I don't think they were actually part of it.
Yeah, in my mind, though, it's like I'm so especially I guess when it comes to Japanese developers, I'm not familiar enough with them that when they're like, oh, a game comes out, it's like, okay, that makes like obviously like a Pokemon company's not owned by Nintendo, but they have this agreement with them. But in your head, you're like, it's just they're Nintendo.
They're synonymous,
yeah. So it's like I thought like, oh, it's published by Square, it must be a small studio that Square owns or something, But yeah, it's like, oh, I guess they're just a different group. So I'm curious what that'll mean. Like if they'll get more funding. I'm curious if it's like, is it beneficial for them to be under Kadokawa versus being indie, being published with, Square. So we'll see what happens there. But just you don't usually hear about Japanese acquisitions that often. Like, Square obviously purchased a couple of Western developers in the past and then let them go and acquired some IPs. But typically you hear a lot about, big publishers acquiring stuff, but usually they're Western European publishers and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not often you hear too much about the Japanese publishers. Especially, I'm not familiar with Kadokawa Corporation at all. Like, I don't even know who else they have under them.
Yeah, they're not like I mean, they're kind of like background compared to the fact that From. So
yeah, we'll see what happens. So that means more Octopath Traveler. Like, do they have less of I guess a financial goal? Like, Square is very like, hey, if something sells well, but to them it's like, oh, Tomb Raider had to be 7 million copies and yada yada, like back in the day. Like, I'm curious if it'll be better under, because the success of FromSoftware, like, can that studio's success carry a smaller studio if it doesn't perform? I'm assuming Octopath Traveler 2 sold well. I didn't follow it because I don't play those games.
Yeah, it's pretty popular, but yeah.
Yeah, in the fan base, they seem really popular, but I have no idea how big that fan base is.
Oh, like how much they sell.
Yeah, so like, is this a better chance for Octopath Traveler 3 or a Octopath a spiritual successor versus if they had done it under Square, maybe Square wouldn't have funded it or something. So
I'm curious too if that means that they're going to make different types of games, because I know usually when Square Enix publishes smaller developers and stuff like that, it's usually for RPGs. So I'm curious if they're going to make another just another like turn-based RPG with a completely different system or something like that, or if they're going to branch out and do something different, kind of like how Tokyo RPG Factory does. They make RPGs, but they also, at least with Onenaki, they branched out kind of more like action oriented.
Yeah. Let's see. And then we had, so Disney purchased like a $1.5 billion stake in Epic Games to create an expansive universe within Fortnite, apparently, according to this IGN article. But what's annoying is that Robert Iger, the CEO, said here, during an earnings call, quote, "Our exciting relationship with Epic Games will bring together Disney's beloved brands and franchises with the hugely popular Fortnite in a transformational new game." Okay, there we go. Sorry. The way it was written out looked weird. In a transformational new games and entertainment universe. This marks Disney's biggest entry ever into the world of games and offers significant opportunities for growth and expansion. We can't wait for fans to experience the Disney stories and worlds they love in groundbreaking new ways. Disney was one of the first companies to believe in the potential of bringing their worlds together with ours in Fortnite, and they use Unreal Engine across their portfolio, said Tim Sweeney. So it's now just a new quote. So I wish they had put that up top instead of having two quote paragraphs back to back and not saying, now we're collaborating with on something new to build a persistent, open, and interoperable ecosystem that will bring together the Disney Fortnite communities. It's like, okay, whatever that means, but
Digital Disneyland.
yeah, I guess that would be cool. But I'm like, if you wanted to get in the games, like you shut down LucasArts, man. Like
I know, right?
And so I don't know. It's just weird. Like, and it's only well, obviously it's because Epic and Fortnite is so huge, but it's just I don't know what you expect out of this. Like, okay, I don't know what the revenue looks like downstream from this collaboration. Like, what are they going to do that's going to bring outside of costumes or something? Like, I don't know what
I was
you
gonna say
would do.
microtransactions. That's it.
Yeah,
People will pay
that's
to be
it.
a princess in Fortnite.
Yeah, there's already they've had done Star Wars collabs in the past and stuff. It's like I guess there'll be more of that, but I don't know. I don't know. That's just a big investment, man. And like it says new experiences, I guess. But I know they have like that Fortnite Island, which a lot of people make like stuff like there's that Among Us Fortnite version that came out, and like you can make like cool custom stuff. There's some interesting things you can do within the engine and using the assets in from Fortnite and whatnot. There's some cool stuff I've seen. So I guess doing that and it's just in the Fortnite launcher, I suppose. Like, hey, there's a new Star Wars experience or a Star Wars like game, but you access it through Fortnite. But it's like not related at all.
It gives me big like PlayStation Home vibes, but Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just log into Fortnite and go to Disneyland basically, and there's nothing really to do. I guess like people could make Disney based like games like the Among Us stuff and stuff like that, but that's just kind of the vibe that it gives me, because like you're right, they want to get into the game sphere, but they closed down their like well-established video game thing that they bought. It feels like they just bought Star Wars out of spite at this point, because they just bought it, cut out all of the extended universe stuff, cut out all of the video game development, and we're like, we own this now. What are you going to do about it? Nothing, I guess.
It lets people, quote, play, watch, shop, and engage, end quote, with their favorite characters and stories from Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, Avatar, and more.
PlayStation Home.
Yeah, right. I mean, I guess that's what it is, but it's just so weird.
Which was neat. Like it was a very cool concept. I used to go on PlayStation Home a lot because I had a friend that was like long distance and we both had it and we're into it, and I bought like a really cool little like Tron themed house that we hung out in and did stuff in. But it was like that was usually what we did just to decide what we were going to do for the rest of the night. Like we would log on to Home and just goof around for a little bit and be like, okay, you want to go play Assassin's Creed or do you want to go play Final Fantasy? Like what's going on?
Yeah, I remember now, like going to the movie theater section and watching like trailers for stuff.
Yeah,
like treating it like almost like if you could do like a digital E3. I think they might have done. I don't think they did E3 in there at all, but yeah, I remember logging in because they had bowling too. Did bowling, but yeah.
That's the vibe that it's giving, which is like that's fine, I guess, if that's like what Fortnite wants to do, and now Disney wants to be like, hey, make us a dedicated like area where people can go, and like it's PlayStation Home Disneyland is what I'm getting off of it, but we'll see.
Yeah, you run up to something, you look at it, and you're like, okay, let's meet my friends here virtually, queue up to this Avatar experience or the Star Wars experience. Like, yeah, I guess, but
let's all meet up in front of the Walt statue before we go play Fortnite.
Yeah, let's dab. Okay, but we'll see. Yeah. So then moving on, earlier in the week we had an article that came out from I believe it was like an earnings report from Krafton. It's a financial report from Krafton saying that Subnautica 2 was going to be a multiplayer sequel to the original IP, pursuing fandom, snowballing, exploring, and the players will be able to explore an oceanic world, stunning visuals, yada, single, 4-player or up to 4-player co-op in a games as a service model and enhanced replayability. And then people are like, whoa. Like, what's up with this? It's a gas? What's going on here? And then they came out. So the Unknown Worlds came out and said, no. It's not multiplayer focused. There will be co-op, but it's you don't have to do it. And it's not a games as a service. We're just going to be updating, doing updates just like we've done with the other games, which is so weird that you would think that someone would call updating a game like treating as a games as a service from a publisher standpoint. Because I'm like, no, like it's just patching, fixing stuff. Like, yeah, if they release in early access, then yeah, it would be quote unquote, you could call it like games as a service, because then every couple months they add new features or what have you until they launch in 1.0. But it's like, that's why it's called early access. You don't need to call it a games as a service, but
Fiscal Division only hears things in buzzwords. So
yeah, that's right. It gets shareholders excited. Oh, games as a service, that's money. But
that's what everybody else is doing. We need one too.
Yeah, I'm curious because they Krafton said it was up to 4-player, but Unknown Worlds didn't say, like, they just said yes, co-op is an option. So I'm curious if it indeed will be up to 4-player. And then I wonder, because I love Subnautica, and I always wish, like, man, I wish this was co-op like The Forest. And then I'm like, okay, well, if they add the problem with The Forest, it scales a little bit, I guess, when you play co-op, but not a lot. I'm curious, like, okay, well, how is Subnautica going to scale? Like, will there be extra resources so each player can kind of get enough, or will there be more? Like, there's no real combat in the game. Like, yeah, you can build, anti-deterrent weapons and missiles to fight Leviathans or what have you, but I'm curious how the game will work and balance, because I think there's mods for the first Subnautica to play multiplayer. But yeah, I'm wondering how that game will be adjusted to be 2 people. But that'd be cool, because I would love to play Subnautica with it's not that it matters, because it's not like we have too much time to play co-op games anyways, but the idea of it is exciting. But yeah, looking forward to that. No idea, no timeline when this is going to come out, but yeah. And then there's going to be a big hefty patch 6 coming to Baldur's Gate 3 soon. It's going to have improved kissing, apparently. I guess some I think some characters, like, they don't quite line up with. There was a funny patch recently, I think in patch 4 or 5, where, like, if Karlak tried to kiss someone who was shorter, like, it would be, the character models would be off a bit. So I guess they improved it either to, maybe they did like a camera tweak where it's like they, actors in movies who have to stand on a box or something to make them look taller than they are, but you can't see their feet in the scene. Like, maybe they do that where it's like, oh, we'll just make Shadowheart a little taller by floating her in the air for this close-up kiss scene or something. Like, but
super tippy toes.
Yeah. But there'll be that, and then new camp idle animations, a bunch of other stuff. They didn't really list it all out. I'm sure once the patch goes live it'll be full list, but I guess there's like stuff for honor mode that they're adding. Some people are really scared, just like, I got to finish honor mode before the patch comes out, because it's like they added new, what they call, I guess, legendary actions, which I think are unique actions that bosses can do. That is kind of like that twerk, like, or that tweak, that twerk. It's like that tweak to the difficulty where it's like, okay, it's honor mode, but each boss has like a special, like, limit break that they can do randomly. It's like, now we added new legendary limit breaks they can do, and it's like, it's like, we got to beat it because maybe this shit's going to be really difficult when they do these legendary moves.
Oh god, they added enrage to everything.
Yep. But
0.1% wipe, now your game is over.
Yeah. Oh no. That damn permadeath. But yeah, the full patch notes will be live on their site once it hits. No official lots of bug fixes, they say. No official release date for that patch, but that'll be coming out soon.
Just in time for us to finish the game.
That's right. Then yeah, the last thing I saw was so there was like rumors going around that let me pull up the thing, so at least I have the proper quote once I get there. But there was rumors going around that Microsoft is going to bring some games to PlayStation, and then they're like, it's going to be like Starfield and Machine Games, Indiana Jones, and this and that, like just rumors. And then Starfield was like the first one, and then it was like suddenly like everybody was going on, like all the people who are like known for like rumors from employees at game companies were like, yo, we heard this and this are coming and blah blah. And then it was just like everybody's like, whoa, now it's a ton of people. But then Phil Spencer tweeted on the 5th, which was Monday, so it was like pretty quick after. Was the 5th Monday? It doesn't matter. He tweeted pretty quick after, like it kind of snowballed on social media, and he's like, we're listening and we hear you. We've been planning a business update event for next week where we look forward to sharing more details with you about our vision for the future of Xbox. Stay tuned. And when he said that, I was like, okay, there is clearly some legitimacy to these rumors. But when I look at it, it's like a lot of the games they talk about, like, because there was rumors, it was like, Starfield and Hi-Fi Rush and Indiana Jones. And then someone said Gears, like Gears 1 through 3 or something like that was one of the rumors. Like, that's interesting. But then I was like, well, these are all third party, prior to acquisitions, they're all like third party things. Like they're Bethesda games. So you got Machine Games there with Wolfenstein or with Indiana Jones. You've got Hi-Fi Rush from, I'm blanking on their name, Tango Gameworks. And then you've got Starfield from Bethesda as well. So it's like, okay. And then Gears 1 through 3 was quote unquote second party from Epic. Those weren't, it's not like if they said Gears 4, which is from, oh my gosh, what's the name of the Gears studio now? The Coalition. Like that would be different. But it's like, okay, if you're just releasing like a remaster of 1 through 3, which I think exists on Xbox maybe, and on PlayStation, it's like that makes sense because that was technically a third party, quote unquote, exclusive to Xbox. So like all these titles are stuff that was from studios they recently acquired. So it kind of makes business sense in that case, especially if they do like a timed window. I mean, who knows? Maybe by the time this podcast posts, they'll have already talked about it. But yeah, I don't know. It's so weird, like seeing the people too, like freak out about it. Who were, I mean, we saw the same thing when Sony started releasing games on PC, like a year or longer after they've come out on PlayStation. Like, oh, well, this and that and yada yada. It's like, well, we don't know for sure. We don't have all the details. But like I saw one video, someone quote tweeted it like saying, this feels like a video where someone shares the bad news that they got or they shared a cancer update or something. And like because it was so like that kind of tone and dramatic. Like they weren't acting dramatic, but it definitely felt that way, like confusion and uncertainty and yada yada. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they say, because I guess that's kind of what we're waiting on. Yeah, I don't know. It's the people. I feel like a timed window would make sense, even if it's only like 6 months. And I understood that the Gene Park had tweeted like saying, I could see it if it's like someone just recently invested in the Xbox ecosystem, and they had to pick between one or the other $500 boxes, and this is the one they went with because they wanted Starfield. And it's like, if I just waited, hypothetically, 6 months, I could have got the box that had Spider-Man and Starfield. So it's like, I get that from like a buyer's remorse standpoint for more recent customers. But if it's just going to be like, hey, if you own our box, you get Game Pass. And if you don't own our box, you can buy the game for $70. Like, I'm sure they must have seen, like, after they made the acquisition of Bethesda, like the sales for Deathloop on PlayStation when it was an exclusive And then when it releases on their platform, like they must see those numbers and like, oh, that's some pretty good financial numbers, man. If we're going to cut out that market, like that's take a major hit. It's like, why don't we just go ahead? Like, it's not like they're going to bring Halo over, or maybe they will down the line to be like some of the old, like Master Chief Collection or something. But it's like,
Yeah.
But like, yeah, if they brought Gears over, I'd be like, okay, I've never played the Gears games. I've seen them, I know of them, and I've heard a lot about them, but I never played them. It's like I could see maybe trying those out, but yeah, it's everybody's in this weird holding pattern because someone tweeted like, it's the longest week in Xbox gamers' life because they have to wait to see what Microsoft's going to say. But it's and then someone it was the Hellblade. It was on the subreddit. At first, I didn't know what they were pointing out, but they showed the game page for Hellblade used to say Xbox, PC, and Game Pass as the releases. Now it just says consoles, PC, and Game Pass. So it looks like it's like, okay, well, that makes sense because that was also a recently acquired studio that used to be that did release Hellblade 1 on PlayStation. So it could be like, oh, that's going to be just a timed exclusive, and maybe they could do that 6 months to a year situation. But yeah, we'll. I feel like that's going to be like the big news next week is whatever their plan is.
It's always confusing to me because I feel like there's always been this stupid console war thing where it's like, oh, we have these exclusives and we have these exclusives, but in the reality, 99% of people who play games and invest and pay attention to these things only have one console. They're only going to get they're either going to get the one that all of their other friends are playing, or they're going to get the one that has more of the exclusives or the ecosystem that they've already been in. Like, I never had an Xbox because I grew up with PlayStation. I grew up with PlayStation and Nintendo, so I never had an Xbox myself, but I, like everybody I knew, had an Xbox, so I just played on theirs, kind of thing. So, and also I have an Xbox in the form of my PC at this point. Like, they just release everything on Game Pass. I play PC Game Pass. But I feel like nobody has gone to their like fiscal division and been like, look, most of the revenue after the consoles is software. So if we buy these studios and release their games on the other consoles, that's twice as many sales we would have got if it was just exclusive. Like, I feel like somebody has finally gotten into a position to be like, idiots, just release the game on the other platforms, and all that money still comes to us. It's not like our studio releases the game on PlayStation and PlayStation gets all the money. That's our studio. It goes to our studio. We get money from it too. And somebody was like, oh, I see. And it's like, of course, like the people who are in the Xbox ecosystem already, they're not going to care, because if they already don't have a console, they're going to get it anyway. They're going to get an Xbox anyway because they want Game Pass, or they're going to get a PlayStation anyway because that's what they wanted. That's what they've always had, kind of thing. Or they're not going to buy an Xbox at all because they already have a PC that plays all of the Xbox games. So unless it's exclusive to the console, which it's not worth buying a $500 console just for a single game. So it's always been this, like, I don't know, this like blind spot, I guess, in like the games industry that's like, why is this such an issue? And why is this now like huge, like anticipated news, when everybody should be like, yeah, idiots, if you release the game on more platforms, you get more money.
Yep.
It's like people are like, oh my god, this is such a big thing. This should have been a thing like 20 years ago. It's always been such a dumb thing to me. And it's like, yeah, I don't understand like the inner workings of, you know, the entertainment industry and all of this other crap, but it seems like if money is the bottom line, that's the obvious like solution to it. Number go big if you release more number.
Yeah. Also, it's like, it's such a smart move to, in not just the financial aspect of it, but you have so many studios that have already made games on the last gen platform, and the current gen platform is very similar architecturally. So it's like, they don't need to do a learning phase. Their engines they have already work on the platform. So it's like, there's no investment cost in, hey, let's get 343 up and running to build all the recent Halos on that platform. It's like, no, you just be like, hey, Bethesda, you already made Fallout, Arcane's already made games, like all this stuff. Like, you could easily put this on the platform with little effort. You've already done the bulk of development for Xbox and PC. So it's like such an easy, copy paste .ps5 and then I know it's not that simple, but it's like it's like, and then bam, revenue. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's so smart if they do it with all the recently acquired studios. Like it'd be such a good move. And then if they wanted, they could probably talk to did Sony I gotta look at it because they officially acquired Bluepoint, right? Yeah, there's like that bit where it's like one of them leaked like, hey, welcome to the family, son, and it was like Bluepoint when it meant to be I think they bought Housemarque, right? I think at the same time, man, I gotta double check because I remember there was like they acquired Housemarque in 2021, but yeah, there's like a bit where like people thought they were gonna get Housemarque and like maybe they'll get Bluepoint, and then like one leaked, I think, because anyways, but it's like maybe it could be like, hey, let's work with Sony and be like, hey, we'll bring these previously first party studio games that weren't made by studios that did anything on your platforms, give them to Bluepoint and have them do like a remake or something, and be like, but you can release on both. Like, hey, do the remake, and then maybe it's like for your platform, and then also do one for us, or maybe don't, just have them like do it and they just get a cut because it's their IP, but yeah, it's like it's such a smart move that they do that. Again, I feel like it comes down to that time frame. It's like, but then it's like, even if it is 6 months or a year later, it's like waiting sucks. Like when you're a gamer, so it's like, it's not like, oh boo, I had Starfield and now in 6 months it's going to be on PlayStation. It's like, yeah, but for the people that are excited about the game, you got to play it right. Hey, they have to wait for it to even though it's like, whatever your opinions are of the game, it's like they still have to wait. It's like waiting. It's like when the Tomb Raider sequel came out, and it's like, oh, it's timed exclusive on Xbox. It's like, man, it's like, okay, I just have to ignore like everybody talking about it on podcasts for a while, and then a year later I'll finally get to play it. But then, so it's just like, yeah, I don't know why it's such a detriment. It's like they're still making money. It's not going to defund Xbox and be like, now there's not going to be a console anymore and blah, blah, blah. But it does kind of help push people to, like, maybe if they aren't those Halo diehards or Gears of War diehards, to be like, yo, a lot of those third parties that they bought up, I like their games, and PlayStation as a sum total more than I like those specific Xbox exclusives I was playing previously. Maybe I will invest in this and still buy those games. And then if they do bring Game Pass to other platforms, then you could be like, okay, you can just subscribe there and not have to buy anything, just do Game Pass. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. And it's funny, like, I'm curious, like, how I talk about the Discord, but I'm curious, how long have they had this game plan? Because like during the Activision Blizzard acquisition trials, like, did they know then that they were going to do this, but they couldn't say anything? Like,
right.
We just have to dance or like not say it and be like, yeah, there's an agreement, yada, yada. It's like, and because they've talked about wanting to bring stuff to other platforms, yada, yada, this and that, but never like, again, we've talked about it too. Like, oh, you say that, but I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
But now it's like, okay, maybe we'll see it. So
I feel like it's just a good look too, from like a consumer standpoint, even for people that don't necessarily follow the news this closely and like have these kind of conversations with their friends and stuff like that. It's just a good look. It's like, oh, well, Microsoft, they publish their games on all the different platforms, but they also do the Game Pass. So it's like, but Sony, on the other hand, is keeping all their exclusives for themselves. So it's like, I'm going to buy an Xbox because I like that company better. Like, it's just a better look from the consumer standpoint. And again, me talking out my ass, I feel like it's better from an analytics standpoint too. Like, if you have all of these studios and they're releasing their games on all of the platforms, you're going to be able to see what platform that particular game is selling better on. And then you get the overscope of like, okay, well, all of these studios are also selling their games on PlayStation. Which platform are people buying this studio's particular game on, and then you can analyze from there. Like, okay, well, with this particular game, what does it do better on, you know, Sony's platform than ours? Is it running better? Is it more stable? Is there something wrong with like the way that it plays on our console? And you can, it's like you get that direct feedback rather than having to rely on, you know, whatever Sony is telling you as far as their numbers and stuff like that. You don't have to rely on a different company to tell you like, oh, our game sold this much on this platform. And I don't know, it just feels like it's a better way to analyze and see what the market wants.
Yeah, it also helps like to control the performance parity too. Like there's so many times, you know, not so much this gen, at least not to the degree. Mainly because they have Series S. That's why you see it. But like when they compare like PS5 to Xbox, a lot of things are more 1-to-1. But there are sometimes instances where it's like, oh, this game on Xbox has a slight performance disadvantage. You know, maybe not something most gamers know, but it's like you could, if you're producing those games, more of those games for both platforms, you could be like, okay, let's make sure they're both running at 60. Okay, are they both getting, you know, at least similar resolution? Maybe not resolution parity, because sometimes Xbox can do a higher internal resolutions when they do upscaling than PlayStation 5 games, depending on the game. But it's like you'd have better control of that versus worrying about some, you know, third-party studio make a game, be like, oh man, that game's, it's performing better on the rival console than it is on ours. Because, you know, you see that a lot too, where it's like, you know, when Baldur's Gate came out and it's like, oh, Xbox eating your saves. And it's like, okay, we're working with them. It's like, but if you control that, you know, you make sure that stuff, you know, makes it, you know, gets caught in quality assurance and whatnot.
Yeah, and if you can see like you can see the numbers directly and you can see it as like raw data, you can be like, okay, well, this game is selling more on PlayStation and maybe the community is saying that it runs better on PlayStation. So what's happening there that's not happening over here?
Yeah, it's gotta be interesting. I'm curious how they work around that stuff. Like, okay, maybe they don't give them, you know, like PS6 dev kits. Like, how do they handle that kind of stuff? You know, yada yada. Maybe they won't give them. There's gonna be some kind of like extreme NDA where it's like only a certain amount of people can talk about it and I can't, like I don't know how you do with that, but
I'm gonna give this to you, but you can't tell your dad.
yeah, I mean, in most cases, like, you know, usually when it comes to that kind of stuff, they give people like a rough idea for third parties, like, hey, here's this. They give their internal first party studios more of like close to finished spec, but then it's like, okay, you know, here's a general hit, design your games like this. And then when it comes to launch, maybe it'll just be less third-party games at launch, more first-party stuff, and then only certain third parties that aren't owned by Microsoft and whatnot. And then obviously they can just give, you know, Bethesda, if they have a launch game or whatever, or Call of Duty, you know, to Activision, be like, hey, here's the, you know, plan around this spec, and then this and that. But yeah, I'm really curious, like the business back end. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they say, because I'm wondering if it's going to be a situation too where it's like, this is our plan, but it only works if Sony agrees. And like, hey, we want to bring Starfield to PlayStation, but Sony has to, you know, work out that deal. Like, are they okay with it? And I'm curious, like, if it's going to be a market forward look for Xbox, and then Sony just saying, no, we don't want to do that. And then so will PlayStation gamers be upset? Because like, I don't care about a lot of their catalog, but I would like to play this game they have, or play Indiana Jones when it comes out, you know, because I like, you know, I'm bummed I could miss out on that, this and that, but that'll be interesting.
I'm starting to feel like now it's a little bit of like psychological warfare, because it's like they come out and say this and then it's like, well, it's up to Sony. And then if Sony says no, then it's a bad look on Sony. So they're kind of like backed into a corner, and it's kind of like getting people ready for that next gen kind of thing. Like, oh, well, Microsoft tried to be friends and Sony didn't want to be friends. So I think this gen I'm going to buy an Xbox.
Yeah, it's a propaganda game, like positive propaganda. It's like, hey, we want to do this.
Just make video games.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. It'll be an interesting week. I'm very curious if they already have stuff locked down, or if it's just like here's our vision. We're not there yet, but we're working with, you know, Sony or Nintendo or what have you. But yeah, it'll be interesting stuff to see what Microsoft does. It could be potential for huge industry changes, major ramifications. But yeah, we have to wait and see. Hopefully they talk about it early and it's not like later in the week. But yeah. All right. Well, yeah, that's basically it. There wasn't a whole lot else. I know there was a like HideoTube new video went out. I guess he hasn't done one of his videos in a while. I mean, that, so I watched part of it because they had like, bits and pieces from like Norman Reedus talking about the game, George Miller seeing himself in the game, yada yada. I'm watching it first, like little snippets from the actors, Elle Fanning, and it's like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But I never watched any of his older ones because it's like they're all, there's no, it just has subtitles. I'm like, I just don't have time to sit there and have to focus on the video to read the subtitles. I'm like, this is like an area where real-time AI translating could be like huge. Like people always talk about AI, and I feel like when you mention AI, it's such a blanket term. It's like, because there's so many things that already use AI in some form or machine learning. I mean, we do that with like DLSS and whatnot in video cards. Like there's machine learning and stuff like that. It's like there's so many areas where AI implementation makes sense, but it's just gotten such a bad rap because of mainly from the creative standpoint of using people's voices and stealing art and all this stuff, Mid-Journey and whatnot. It's like, it's like now suddenly that's AI. But like I would love just active translations for an AI program, because then I could be like, okay, I could see the video and like it would lower the audio of the person talking and then have a higher audio for the AI translation. And then you can do like voice packs or something. You can, have Troy Baker be the translator. I don't know. But it's just like, I wish that was it. So then I could watch so much more material. But or just don't do that. Just do a dub over, just like a normal translation video where that's typically what they do. But it's like, do one or the other. I don't know. But anyway.
I know they went through all the trouble of translating and subtitling it. Why not just have the translator dub over it?
Yeah, and because they typically do that for a lot of stuff. If it's a long video. And yeah, I guess like, yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe they don't have as many translators as they need, or there's no like active translator at a studio. Like, yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like, cause it seems like something that you could do with AI that wouldn't necessarily be quote unquote, stealing a bunch of jobs from people. It's like, because if you cared enough, you would have done it, I feel like. But if you make it easier, just for these unique instances, obviously they're not going to do it like at a Game Awards when, FromSoftware wins something. They're not going to have like an AI translator in the speakers. They have their translator there, and what have you. But yeah, I don't know. Just I think it's like, man, I wish this was, if they're not going to translate it, at least give me some sort of, I don't know, YouTube translation implementation that the people posting the video can opt into. It's all about options. But anyway, but yeah, it was weird. Like there's a bit in there where he talks about like in 2020 he got super sick, and like he's like, yeah, I got so sick I made out a will. It's like, what? But like he says it in that very Kojima like upbeat, like even though he's talking about something that could be really sad. I feel like you get that a lot from anytime someone speaks, because I guess because if I don't know the language, I don't know if
you don't know the inflection.
Like, right. Like, is that the depressed inflection? If I was to tell the same kind of story that was sad to me, but I wasn't, but the way they're saying it still sounds so upbeat. You know what I mean? Like, if that makes sense. Oh, sorry.
I whacked my mic and it's got a bunch of crap hanging off of it.
But yeah, it's like he's like, yeah, I made out a will. I was like, okay, that's kind of scary. I'm glad he didn't go. But yeah, just nothing crazy in there. Like it was fun watching the people talk about it, and seeing Norman Reedus talk about like, he's like, yeah, seeing the trailer and stuff, but now we've done more recording and stuff. It's like now a lot of things are saying like it makes sense now, like all the pieces are coming together, this and that. And I'm like, I don't expect Norman Reedus to totally get Death Stranding 2. I mean, he didn't really get all of Death Stranding 1, but feels a lot like Jackie Chan in Rush Hour, where he talks about how I had no idea what any of the jokes were because I didn't know the language. He's like, but people were laughing. They said it was funny, so I just read what they said. But it's like, yeah, I'll just do it. He's the guy. it should make sense to him. But
he's made like one connection from the first game to the second game, and he's like, it all makes sense now.
Yeah, right. He's like mind blown. Like I get it now.
we it's okay. We understand. You're probably doing like 2 other things at the same time. You don't have to. You don't have to be like a deep dive into the Death Stranding lore.
Right. He's quoting Higgs like, I have an understanding with the Death Stranding. Like I get it. But yeah, just small little video. But yeah, that was basically it for the news. Not a ton else. Like I said, the big bits will be whatever Microsoft says next week. So hopefully not right after he posts, because then this will immediately become useless.
Yeah, but, that's 30 minutes of discussion that are wrong.
Yeah, but I mean that's essentially everybody. Like you gotta.
Yeah.
Because I was going to be like, oh, like if he had said like on Friday, I talked about it less. It was like just that sitting there on Monday, just thinking about it. It was like, man, it's a lot. But all right, well, we can go ahead and move on from that into what we've been playing. Go ahead and start with you. I haven't been looking at Discord lately, so I don't know if I've seen like the little TV in the corner. And you and Baldur. I usually see like if I'm on Steam, I see Michael log in, I can see what he's playing, but he plays like a couple different things. So every time, sometimes when he plays Baldur's Gate, he's playing like his own save and not with you, so I can never tell exactly when you two are playing. But have you been playing Baldur's Gate?
Not really very much this week. I didn't have a whole lot of time after work to play anything this week. It was busy with other crap, taking care of my sick cat. But we're probably going to finish it this weekend, which is good because I have a 3-day weekend, so I'm off tomorrow too. So I'd like to finish it because I think Banishers comes out on Tuesday, and I really want to play that. I have it like on a countdown on my phone, and I still keep forgetting that it's coming out soon. So I want to get that and play it. So hopefully we'll finish. We did oh gosh, was it Thursday or Friday night? We did Orin and Gortash. So all we really have, I'm pretty sure we've cleaned up all of the side stuff at this point, so we really only have like the ending to do. So we'll probably do that either later today or maybe sometime tomorrow, because I don't think he has Monday off, but we'll do it at some point. So
Cazador?
We did Cazador, yeah.
So what I'm assuming you're playing kind of that like not evil but good with an attitude kind of way. So what did you choose? How did the Astarians?
I did not let him ascend.
Okay.
So I really thought about it because I was like, yeah, my character's kind of a bitch, but she's not like straight up evil. Like I intimidate people, but it's just because I don't want to fight. So it's just like I'm intimidating my way out of fights kind of thing. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. Like I don't want to necessarily leave it up to him, but I want to do that like kind of ambiguous option that like I don't even remember which one I picked. Like you're better than this or something like that. Like kind of not directly like give him a command kind of thing.
Right.
And just to see like is the relationship level like at the point where I think it is, and yeah, so I did that, and which was funny because Michael was saying that on his game, one of the like the other vampires like that are doing the ritual, he said one of them died in his game or whatever, so he didn't even like get the option. So all of the dialogue that my character was having with Astarion, he didn't even get to see that, like giving him the choice and everything like that. So
I don't know how they die because they're like floating up in stasis and you can't interact. Maybe AoE can kill them.
Yeah, that's AoE can kill them. Yeah, because he was very specific. Like, don't do AoEs around the people, or don't like, because I think you can push them too. Because
I guess that makes sense. Like, it's a way to stop Cazador's ascension is just killing innocents. So it's like if you're that kind of player, they give you that option. Yeah, because I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, he said that. I don't remember if he said like an AoE killed them or if he like pushed them off the edge on accident or something like that. But yeah, he said that one of them had died or got killed or whatever, so he didn't even get the option. So it was kind of neat.
Oh man, that's such a good scene.
I know, it really was. And like the conversation after in like the camp where he's like, kind of like spilling out his heart, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're with me, and I'm so glad I have you." And I was just like, "Oh, bestie."
Yeah, thank you for making me not. I kind of like how, because like I feel like either way, if you stop him, he thanks you, but then
Mhm.
like I think like if you send like it's not like a there's still no regret. Like either way, I mean, because it's like that in life. Like you can always wonder like what would have been if you made a different
Mhm.
choice. But I feel like it doesn't necessarily mean that you regret what you did, but you can regret what you could have done.
Mhm.
Um, you know what I mean? So it's like it's like it's nice that they kind of played out so where both ways can be, quote unquote a positive. But yeah, his like breakdown, Neil Newbon in that scene is like this is the scene, like this is why. And then you also did Gortash. So
Mhm.
man, Karlak, dude,
Her stuff was so,
fuck, man.
I know, it was so good. Just like my character, I just told my character, she was just like, "Okay, it's all right, let it out." She just sits there and screams for a little bit, and then
Yeah,
at the end, she was like, "Love you." I was like, "Carlock loves me."
yeah.
It was so
She's like,
nice.
and you just gotta keep on living. And it just this
Yeah,
that like she's man, it was so like so heartbreaking that scene, dude.
and she still got that Carlock personality where she's kind of like joking about it too, and like it's just like, "Oh man, like this sucks," kind of thing. I was just like, "You're
Yeah.
so adorable." It was, yeah, the Gortash stuff was really cool, and I feel like with Asterion, he not ascending him, I think, is better for his like character development because he talks it because before he talks about like, "Oh, I'm gonna take Cazador's place and blah blah," because he's all doing it like out of spite and anger and all this stuff and just kind of like revenge kind of thing. And at the end, he's like, "You know what? I am better than that now." And it's like, "Oh, good for
Hmm.
you. Proud of
Yeah.
you."
I do look forward to sending him in my Dirge playthrough. Just because I think it'd be fun. And I know there's like some really good romance stuff between him and Karlak, but particularly if you ascend him.
Yeah.
Um so that seems really cool. But yeah, so I look forward to doing that with him. But yeah, man, they're both of their stuff in there is great. But yeah.
So yeah, that was really fun. And I we made absolutely sure to make sure Karlach had the killing blow on Gortash.
Hmm.
I was just like, this seems appropriate. She needs to be the one that pokes him to death. And then the cutscene afterwards, she's like, "I need to see his body up close." I'm like, you killed him. You did it. He's
So
dead,
for
honey.
Cazador, did you do the fight straight up or did Michael kind of hint at any other methods?
We did the fight straight up, I think. The
Okay.
only thing he did was he made sure to get over to release Asterion, and
Hmm.
then he just said, "Don't kill any of the other vampires." Other than that, we just we're kind of overpowered, so we kind of just
Yeah.
blasted the shit out of him.
Yeah, I when I first went into the fight, I get there, I did the fight. I didn't realize that Astarion was going to be taken out of my party,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, "Oh shoot!" So I was like, "Okay, let's try to do this fight," and then yada yada. Like it didn't go too well because I totally wasn't prepared, and like I was like, "Okay, let's start over."
Mm-hmm.
And then like so I'm sneaking up, and I started wondering. I'm like, I wonder, and so Shadowheart still had the Blood of Lathander equipped, the relic, and I was like, this shit is sunlight, right? And then so I took it and I crept her like super close to where because it has like an AoE range.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get close enough to Cazador, he just starts taking DOT damage from the sunlight.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
he hides in his coffin. And then I'm like, then you can do the fight without him there. So I did that just to see like what would happen. I'm like, oh shit, it works. Because I thought like maybe, oh, he'll aggro. Like, cause I could throw it
Mm-hmm.
his direction, and then she doesn't have it equipped, but it could still do it. But it did. I was like, oh, it worked. But then I reloaded the fight, and then I forget what I did, but I triggered it in such a way where you can skip the dialogue, so he doesn't capture Asterion. I
Mm.
forget how I did it. Like it was by accident. I was like, I'm just gonna go do this fight. Well, I think I didn't go talk to him. I just attacked. That's what I did. If you just attack.
Oh.
So I did like I just went up and like I put everybody into position and then I just attacked to get the upper hand and then we just did the fight. I had a steering and then but it
Mm.
was really funny because I was like, will this weapon do any damage to him? Because he's not ascended. And like, yeah, it works. I'm like, what an easy way to cheese this fight.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I did the
Because
same.
I have that equipped on my character, and he like tried to come up and attack me, and then he took damage, and then he flew away. And I was like, what happened?
Yeah, I did the same thing when I fought Orin, where it's like the first time I fought her. And then later I went in and I was like, let's go see if I could push this lady off the edge here, because you fight in that arena, but she has like all those extra like, Ututsemi ni going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, let's break this down and then try to push. And and I guess pushing her is also a trophy, or an achievement on Steam. So I was like, oh, nice. I was like, yeah, you just push her off the edge. So like, that's pretty funny. But yeah, good times. Man, I like I'm trying to think of some of the others, the quests that are in there. I like it was a little stressful, but like the Iron Forge segment. Did you do all that? I'm assuming you did if you already beat Gortash. That's
the
where
Steel
you go.
Watch?
No. The Iron Throne.
It's yeah.
Underwater prison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That almost went terribly because I didn't know what was going on, and Michael had never done that on his game. He went to do like the Steel Watch first, and it kind of like locks you out of that or something, or he killed Gortat. I can't remember, but he said he went and did something first, and then it locked him out of doing that, so he never rescued the Duke.
Oh, I went down there and did it. There was such a fun little bit.
We did it on my game, but he had never done it on his, so we didn't know what was happening, and it almost went terribly. We did lose the Mind Flayer guy though, because Michael went and saved him, so he had control of him, and didn't realize that he has a teleport to submarine skill, so he was trying to run him back and ran out of turns, and then on the last turn he was like, oh, I didn't make it, and then he looked at the skill and it said teleport to submarine or whatever, and I was like, really babe?
Yeah.
So we lost him, but I don't think it super has any effect or anything.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what other stuff that happens in Act 3. I like the when you hear about one of my favorite bits was when the hag, you find like the support group for the hag. And then like that was like I was upstairs and there's like a sheep and there's like a doll, and I cast like remove curse on the doll. I wonder if I could do this, and then the one lizard dude's like, oh, you're bad, and you fight him and yada yada. But then when it's like, oh, you got to search for, they don't tell you anything about the hag, but it's like, there's that book in the safe, and then there's that other side quest about the woman looking for her lost child. And I go somewhere and I'm in like I forget, like the mermaid tavern or whatever it is, like and I talked to the person behind the bar. I forget why. I just talked to them, and then I'm like, this and that, and like, oh, she says something like, oh, the lady, she's always saying, her kid was in here, yada yada, she's a liar, this and that, and I was like, all right, whatever. Like, I didn't like pass any. I don't think there's any checks or anything, or like read her mind or anything like that. Options in the dialogue, and then I went downstairs into the basement, and like I saw people walking around with those masks on. I was like, oh shit, the hag's down here. And then like I found her little hiding room with all the I saw like these mushrooms, and I like, that's weird. And then I remember doing that fight and being like, I can't kill her. I was like, how do I defeat her and save this kid? And then I don't remember if you can read the book while you're in the fight, but that was when like I found that book way early on, and so by the time I got to this point, I had forgotten about the book. So I was trying to figure out like, what do I have to do to get her to save? And like, it took me a while, but eventually I remembered like, oh, I found that book that I kind of just skimmed, because usually I like a lot of books in the game, I'll just skim them, because if there's anything important, the character will say it out loud.
Yeah.
So I went back to that book. It's like, oh, you have to make the potion and yada yada. So like, I don't think you can craft and fight. So I think I had to start the fight over. Then I made the potion, and then I just chucked it at her and did the fight. But I love that bit where it's like, here's this small thing where it's like, they put it on the player to read and remember.
Yeah.
And if you get those out of order, like had I talked to the lady with the missing kid and then found the support group, then I would have been like, oh, okay, well, this reading about her eating the kid, but not really eating will be really important. but yeah, that was That was a fun one. I like that quest. And then doing the whole murder mystery is fun. Small quest where you find Gail's cat on the roof. He's killing all the courier pigeons.
We messed that up because I found it on the roof, and Michael was like, "Oh, you have talk with animals. Go talk with the cat." But he didn't realize that you had to have Gail with you at first, so the cat like flew off, and now we can't find it.
Oh,
so we messed that up, but that's okay.
Like, stop eating the courier pigeons, man.
Don't eat the birds. He's like, I'm gonna eat the birds. And you're just like, oh, okay, I guess. Yeah. And he's like, bye.
And then I like fighting that guy up in the tower who wants to. He's like, oh, I Isabel, is that her name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Dame.
Oh, Dame Aelin.
Aelin, yeah, he's like, I want her, and she shows up and like just beats his ass.
Yeah, I went back to camp and was like, hey, Aelin, you want to go kill somebody? She's like, heck yeah, I do.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Mm-hmm. And going down in the basement and stealing all the other book that lets you read the Necromancy of Thay, mm-hmm. and get the ghouls. I love summoning the ghouls in the town because then everybody's like, all the guards freak out, everybody freaks out, but no one like attacks you. It's just you got these ghouls you summon running around with. It's really funny.
I always have at least 3 zombies following me around, so yeah. I pick druid, but I play summoner.
That's right. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff in Act 3. I'm not sure why people say it's so short. I feel like it's dense. Like there's a lot of stuff. There's quests you can do in the sewers.
Yeah, there's a lot. I think we spent as much time here, maybe longer than we have the other acts. So yeah. I mean, the main story is pretty quick, but all the like little side stuff that you do, maybe because it's so hard to find a lot of the side stuff, because you have to like, if you don't use a guide for anything, you have to just find it. And Baldur's Gate is very big and dense, so I can see where you can miss things, but there's a lot.
Yeah, I haven't played too much. I played been playing Factorio. I basically, so I kind of got like to the end, final objectives, like get to a rocket or launch a rocket off the planet, done. You can keep going if you want to after that, but that's like the main goal. Very similar to Auction Not Included. Like I said, RimWorld, other stuff like that. So like I, get all my stuff, researching, getting too far in research, get to production science, this and that. And I'm like, okay, what do I need for this rocket? It's like, oh, you need to build the rocket silo. I'm like, okay, I need like 1,000 concrete, need 1,000 of these things, need like 200 of these. So I like start building these things. I build it up. Then it's like, oh, now you need to build parts for it. It's like, okay, for parts, you need to build 10. It's like 10 rocket guidance packs, 10 something else, and then like 10 of another thing. And they're like, I'm like, okay, well, let's build these. Pretty, not super complicated, but it's like, okay, they take a bit because there's some pretty advanced production to do. And then I put them in there, and it's like, oh, that's 1%. I'm like, oh, okay, so I need like 1,000 of each of these. So I started thinking like, all right, in order to make 1,000 of these, it would require me to, like, I could stop my research and repurpose some of my production towards one of the items because it required a bunch of circuits, and I was using circuits to build science packs. And I'm like, I saw like ahead of me what it would take to actually launch this rocket. And I'm like, my biggest issue was the only oil field I had was a very small output. It was like 4 wells that were pretty low percentage. It was like the closest one to my base. And I'm like, that was my biggest production deficiency. It was like the bottleneck in my production overall, because like I couldn't make as much plastic as I needed to do everything. So I was like, I just, in my head, I saw everything I had to do. It's like, okay, there's 2 oil fields that were pretty far from my base, but in order to get them, I would have to divert resources to build rockets for my rocket launcher, clear out a bunch of biters, expand my base, build out the train tracks to go there to pump all the petroleum out, ship it back to my base for refinement. In order to build these, you set up this whole new infrastructure set up in the south or the northwest of my base to do this, just to build all the components of the rocket launcher. And I'm like, I knew how long that was going to take to do that. And I'm like, I'm just going to consider myself done, and I'm going to end this playthrough. So I kind of just stopped. But it's like, I I've done very similar in Oni. Like in the OG Auction Not Included, like the objective is to launch a rocket and get to the tear.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I thought it was just launch a rocket. So I launched a rocket. It's like, that's a big milestone. That's the end. I was like, oh, now you have to get to the tear at the end of space. But in order to get to the tear, like you have to build better and better rockets. So like I did some of that because like you had to go send out a rocket to a planet to mine resources that you don't have on your starting asteroid to build materials. It's like advanced science materials to build a better rocket. I'm like, okay, so like you get like super coolant, stuff like that, niobium, all this other stuff. It's like, okay, I see what it's going to take me to do to get this, but like the stuff I learned along the way to get to that point was a lot. And then of course when Spaced Out came out, that kind of changed the way space exploration worked. Still very similar. You have to find the tear, get those advanced materials, make a better rocket, yada yada. I'm like, okay, but I'm like, everything I learned, like oil processing, advanced oil processing, I set up 3 different train track stations. I learned how to do the circuit like requirements in order to make 2 trains work on the same like train track. Like you have to set that on certain like basically like these stoplights that are act as logic gates, where like they look at, you can create segments in your railway to be like, okay, if there's a train in the segment after the one this train's in, you stop at the stoplight until that train's out of that segment, so that way they don't crash into each other. So it was like, that was really fun. Like there's so much about it that was like a lot of fun, and like experimenting with solar power, not fully getting the grasp on it, but realizing like I started like, oh well, how much solar power would I need to really like generate a lot of stuff? It's like, oh, like solar power is like really technically inefficient because it takes so much space. I'm like, yeah, if you have like a giant mega base with a super solar farm, it's like it makes sense. But I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that. But I was like, okay, so I've learned a lot, got a lot of experience doing it. So I'm like, okay, now that I know what I would need to do, the kind of infrastructure I would need for the end game, I'm like, I could do a fresh run and then better prep for it. But I spent like a lot of time at that base. I had a lot of fun with it. Just I think because I know you can, the one thing you can change, I do like how in this versus Auction Not Included, like you can't, unless you have mods in Oni, you can't modify resource aspects of the game. Like you can roll like world traits, which is one thing I like about the randomization of Oni, where it's like, oh, this planet has more volcanic activity, which means not only lava volcanoes, but also maybe aluminum, all the metal volcanoes that there are. It's like, oh, there's more geysers. So it's like, okay, instead of the default, I think it's like 7 and 9, there's 11 to 13. It's like, okay, you could get some that are duds, like infectious polluted oxygen vents. Like, okay, there's no real use for this. Or like carbon dioxide vents, like the hell I don't need this for. Chlorine vents, stuff like that, nonsense. But it's like it does increase chance of natural gas or hydrogen or steam or cold steam vents, stuff that's useful. And you can also do things like metallic caves. So it's like, oh, there's more metal on this planet, which you use for mainly for power. It's like your power grid and stuff like that. It's very important. Other objects as well, but mainly power. And then it's like, okay, in Factorio, you can change, like you can generate a planet. You can see the planet you're generating, which I think is really cool. And you could also see like, okay, it doesn't tell you where you're going to spawn, but you can kind of infer like, all right, I see 3 patches of resources here. And the ones that are further out from the starting point get bigger and bigger. Like that kind of rewards you for expansion. Because it makes sense. Because if you're expanding, then you need more resources, so the patches are bigger. But you can adjust the size of the resource patches, the frequency, how many show up on the map, and the density of like the richness of those patches. I'm like, that's kind of cool. So I could see like playing it, like right now I'm just playing a vanilla, everything's default. But I'm like, oh, I could see like if I do my second run, because oil was my bottleneck, and I'm still kind of learning oil was a big thing. I had to like really grasp that, and I don't quite know like how many, okay, if I have this many oil derricks or oil rigs, how many processing oil refineries can I support? And from those oil refineries, how many chemical plants can I support? So if I have like X percentage of output from petroleum, how much of that can I, or how much of that oil can I convert to petroleum, to plastics and all that stuff? And then it's like, okay, if I only have, X percentage, then that means I can make 3 chemical plants doing plastics and have a steady flow. But then, okay, that much plastic how much production will that plastic support? Because you need more of it down the line. Like so much stuff needs higher grade circuits, which requires more plastic, and yada yada. So it's like, okay, I don't have a full grasp on that yet, like I do with Oni. So it's like maybe if I roll again, I'll just do higher yield oil fields, maybe make them slightly bigger. That way, the first one I come across, which is closer to my base, it's got a better output, and that kind of saves me. Or I could do like a maybe increase the density. That way, my starting ones, because that was the one thing too. Like, okay, I got everything up and running, and then it was like I had to learn trains because all my close resources I had used up, expanding my main bus, my base, and my production. And it's like, okay, now I need to learn how to do trains so I can bring in all this shit from far away back to my base. But now that I know that, it's like I would like to not have to need to get to that point as quickly. So maybe if I just increase the density of my starting materials, it would kind of alleviate some of that that timeline that I need to expand. And you get that a lot in Oni. Like in Oni, it's always times of like, okay, how much oxygen does the planet spawn with? You know, oxalite. It's like, okay, if it has this much, that means I need to get oxygen production up this fast. Okay, is there algae? Okay, I can make it by with algae for a bit. How much algae do I have? I can see the total quantity ticking down. I need to build electrolyzers. I need cooling then, yada yada. So it's like I know that workflow and time constraints I have. Where it's like, oh, I need to research insulated tiles because there's a lot of heat coming over here. I got to cool my base, this and that. With Factorio, it's very much like, okay, how much? Like I was doing a lot of like once I got to the first 3 science packs, I was doing a lot of rapid science upgrades. But then I was also upgrading my base when I probably shouldn't have been, like upgrading from yellow belts to red belts. It's like, really, I shouldn't need to do that right away. I should have waited because that's also a lot of production going into making belts for my main bus, which I was hardly using at the time. I was just like, oh, red belt, go fast. Let's make red belts. Versus just maybe making better production facilities, you know, level 2, and do stuff like that. And then, because also if I have increased red belts, I'm like, okay, well, in order to really, I feel like the problem you run into is the base design for your production, like your refineries. It works fine if you upgrade that to red belts first, as long as you have the appropriate. That means you have to make more drills to drill more minerals, because now it's like, okay, you increase the bandwidth that can move on these belts, but if you don't have enough production to meet that bandwidth, it's kind of like, it's just a waste. It's like, why do it? So I feel like I need to slow my roll when it comes to upgrading my belts, my base and whatnot, and just kind of take it a little slower. But I had a ton of fun playing it. I got killed by my train like twice because I usually play with my camera zoomed out, but I had my camera zoomed in too much, and I was like crossing the tracks, and then when my train's coming by, it just wipes me out, and I'm like, oh, all right, I'll respawn. I wish I had replays on, because I would have loved to save like how many times I had one where like I almost drove my car over the track at the same time that the train was going by. I would have blown up my car.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was just it was ridiculous. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I built an artillery cannon, built a couple artillery shells, and used that for a bit. That was fun. Just to try it out. I wanted to get to like giant robot you can get in. I was like, that'd be fun, but I didn't get there. I was like, I'll just wait, because I need to like, it just would have taken, at that point, it took too much science, and I didn't have my production science quite at the level I needed, because plastic was really my hang up to make it. It was just like, but yeah, I love it. And apparently there's like a big old 2.0 update. So it's come out in, I think, August,
Really?
later this year, I guess. And it's supposed to, I guess the way Factorio does their updates is they take a lot of things that people love from the modding community and just make it part of the game. So it's like, because I was curious, like, oh, if I try not to play modded on these kind of games, like even on Oxygen Not Included, I hardly mod it. And the mods I use are just like very minor quality of life things that if I didn't have them, I could get by just fine. And even some of them, they have like they're not always useful. Like there's like one of Oni's issues, if there's like a lot of stuff in a stack, it just like has like a item card that pops up, and then everything else in that stack shows up below the item card, but then it just goes off your screen, and you can click through it. It takes like 50 years, but the way that there's like a mod that collapses it, so if like you have 70 of one item, it's like, oh, granite this much, and like it just tells you, or creature eggs, it's like you have 70 hatchling eggs, and it just puts them all right there, so that way you don't have to see like 70 individual cards. The downside to that is if I'm trying to look for, like, as an example, I would look for like, okay, what eggs have a higher incubation percentage that are going to hatch soon? I want to put those eggs in my incubators to hatch them immediately. Because if I tell a dupe to, hey, put an egg in there, they just grab a fucking egg. They don't know what the incubation period is. So they might put one in that's at 2%. I'm like, dude, why didn't you grab the one that's like at 85? I can get a hatch super fast if you grab that one. So it's like sometimes I'll manually do that kind of stuff. But that's kind of rare. So that's when that mod gets a little annoying. But yeah, other than that, I try not to do a lot of. And the issues I have too with looking at mods nowadays, like, oh, best mods, but the mods are always broken down, like, because Factorio's been out for so long, just like Oni. It's always like, even like Skyrim or other games with popular with mods, it's like best mods, like, oh, the 5 best mods of 2024, and it's like, can you just tell me like as of today, what are like the most popular? Now I can go to like Nexus mod and sort by popular, but I'm like, that doesn't necessarily mean, like, sometimes that shit's booty packs. I don't care. Like, tell me like historically, what's the one that people are still using today? Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily, I don't care about new mods in 2024. Just tell me the best ones. Like, oh, this mod that does this thing in the UI, this mod that does this. So I was like, that kind of stuff. But it's like hard to find. But yeah, I still want to get with vanilla. But yeah, I look forward to re-rolling a bit. I finally figured out a way to easily play it with the kid in my lap. Because I have to use the keyboard. But yeah, I look forward to rolling new one. But I did restart Death Stranding Director's Cut.
Oh yeah, I saw.
Yeah, I re-rolled from the beginning, and then I'm in the open world now, so I got out of the prologue area, and I'm just having a lot of fun playing that. And it was interesting because I think at one point I was kind of like skipping a lot of the early cutscenes, and like I know what happens in the story. Like I'll save those, like the big cutscenes, for later. But I'll like a lot of dialogue. Like, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I've replayed this part multiple times. But there's one bit where Deadman, I think he refers to BB as BB-28. Which in the trailer, he talks about BB-28 being incinerated 4 years before, or at least a while before Sam and Lou, BB, meet. So I was curious, like, wait a minute, did you say, but I haven't seen any cutscene or any reference to BB in Death Stranding 1 being BB-28. So I'm like, okay, that's going to be interesting. Like, is what's going on here? But
a ghost.
Yeah, what's happening? But yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it's fun. Just I forgot like how much they kind of like tease you in that opening area with a vehicle. Like they give you a bike. And like, oh, if you build a recharge tower, you can use the bike. It's like, but you can only use the bike for a bit, because then later on you get like, you have to go around the long way to get back to the main city. Mm-hmm. And it's like the BT show up and the bike just dies. I'm like, great, I can't use this bike anymore. And it's like, all right. But then, yeah, they give you like the first guy you deliver to in the open area after you leave Port Knot City is like, hey, here's an exoskeleton. And it's like, now you get like almost double capacity. Plus you don't have to worry about stability as much. It's like, it's such a huge upgrade when they give you that. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, this is so good. And it's so funny seeing like when I bring a place online and then it shows you all the structures that people built. Sometimes I see stuff where people put down like a ladder. I'm like, y'all could have walked like 6 feet around the corner and just gone up. Like, what'd you put in a ladder? And the way the ropes work in the game, I forgot how kind of annoying it is, where it's like, if you're at the bottom of the rope, you can climb up and then you have the option to like throw the rope back down. But if you're at the top and the rope is at the bottom, you can't use the rope. Like, you need to have the rope up top for some reason to grab it to rappel, instead of just rappelling down the rope that's already hanging off the edge. Like, it's really weird. I don't know why they did it like that. Because like, if you're playing solo, offline, let's say, it's like, okay, I want to go down. I have a gap, but I don't have to say it's too big for a ladder. Okay, I put in the spike, I climb down, and then now the rope's hanging. I find a way up the other side. Then later, maybe I have to go like around to do it. And then later, when I'm coming back, I can put down another spike, climb down, climb up the other one. But because I climbed up, I take the rope with me, and I can put the rope at the top of the thing. That way, if I come back, I can use it again. I don't know why Sam can't just grab the rope, because there's no option for it too. Like maybe there is on your own, but on like community ones, there aren't. Like it's the only option I have if it's just sitting there is to just remove it. And I'm like, it's so weird. I'm like, why? Just let me grab the rope and pull it up, man. Like, I don't know why I can't do that. It's such a weird. I
wonder if it's like a one-way syncing issue or something where the game thinks it's in one state, but you're seeing it in a different state.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I guess because like, okay, if you climb up and you have the rope with you, leave it at top. Yeah, you can't use it climbing up again. So like, okay, we need to balance it to where it works that way both ways, I guess. Like, I don't know why you would do it that way, but I don't know. That was a weird one. I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just go over here and cross this other path. But yeah, it is crazy too. Like the difference between, because I haven't replayed it to the point when I did replay it the first time around, where I actually got to like, yeah, I got to Port Knot City in my last run of Death Stranding Director's Cut on a ways back. But playing it now and being in that open world area and seeing so many more structures is such a different experience than when I played Death Stranding at launch, where it's like there weren't nearly as many. Like there's so many now. It's like, oh, I just see ladders. I see little rappel ropes all over the place. There's signs all over, and I think you can like reduce the signs because those are always in like funny spots. There's like the little pea mushrooms from where Sam relieved himself all over the place. But yeah, it's cool seeing like all these structures. I forgot like that the highways don't quite work that way. Like you still have to contribute. You do end up contributing with other people, especially when it comes to maintenance. You have to like maintain the roads once you build them. Death Stranding. That's where it really comes like a community thing. And there are people can contribute, but I think you have to first contribute like the bulk, and then it starts like once you pass a threshold of materials, then it becomes like other people can help contribute to the highway. But initially you have to really commit as the player to build a section. Because yeah, I thought like, oh, that'd be so cool if like more sections were done, or if more sections get done like as you make progress. Like you don't have a vehicle right away when you get to the open area. Maybe like, okay, if I progress the story far enough, then maybe some of the highways can pop in, because there are some that are like extremely useful. Some segments of it, or other ones like I build it. I'm like, why the hell did I build this? It barely goes anywhere. I could have. This is not needed. But yeah, it is nice seeing like, oh, someone built a recharge station here, where when I first played, I had to build it myself. So it is really cool. It's like such a different experience. And it's so funny too, especially in the starting area, like in the prologue region, because there were so many bridges, and it's like from people with like insanely high porter rig grades, like people that clearly beat the game, got the platinum, and they're just going back and building all this shit. And it's like, but there's too many of these bridges, man. I'm like, there's some of these are redundant, but it's really funny. Like, I'm really curious to see when I unlock all like some of the future traversal upgrades, if I'll see a bunch of those in the starting area as well. Like how many people like committed to building zip lines or whatnot.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's a fun game, man. Just running around and good times, picking up packages, just being a porter. But yeah, I'm not sure when I'll. Yeah, because I am looking forward to playing Banishers. Probably wait and see. I'm curious to see how it does, but I do want to play that. I don't know if I'll play it right away, but I do want to play it. And then of course remake at the end of the month, or Rebirth. All right, well, I guess we can go ahead and call it there. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in and listening. Thank you, Uzziah, for joining. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.